Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to quickly explain what branched chain amino acids or BCAA are and why they are thought to be so important. Further, I'm going to answer the question whether you should supplement with BCAA or not by giving you an overview of the best available evidence and research on BCAAs and how it affects your athletic performance right now. So let's take a step back. What are amino acids? They simply are the building blocks of protein, and protein play a huge various functions throughout your body, including enzymes, structural proteins, involved in transport of proteins through your membrane, etc., etc. And so what are branched chain amino acids? So they are 3 of the 9 essential amino acids that we must consume as human beings because our bodies do not produce these amino acids. And the branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So why are they called branched chain amino acids? Well, it's based off the chemistry. So if you look at the chemical structures that are around me, you'll see that the carbons branch, not just a linear chain, and that's why they're called branched chain amino acids. And what's special about these branched chain amino acids is that they do not get metabolized in the liver like the rest of amino acids. They get metabolized in other body tissues such as muscle cells. Further, branched chain amino acids have a very special role because they can be readily converted to glucose, which we'll talk about later is very advantageous, especially when you're dieting, etc. So BCAAs make about 50% of the amino acids that one may consume in their diet on average, and it makes up about 35% of the amino acids in your muscles. So that is a remarkable amount. So what does the newest research state about BCAAs? If you've not watched my previous video on saturated fats last week, make sure to go check that out to really understand why I talk about why systematic review and meta-analyses are kind of the highest quality of evidence one can find and use when trying to explore certain subjects. And last year, a group out of France completed a systematic review examining the relationship between BCAA supplementation and what is called exercise-induced muscle damage, or for short, EIMD. And there's been very good kind of basic science research in mice and rats, etc., and lower mammalian species and other species showing that BCAA supplementation can promote muscle synthesis, improves muscle recovery, etc., etc. But not all that research translates to humans. So what they've done is throughout their research, the literature search, they found 12 studies that were mostly RCTs or crossover design studies, and we'll discuss what that means exactly, crossover design studies versus a randomized clinical trial study examining this relationship. And they found that overall, their conclusion was that BCAA supplementation shown promise in reducing your exercise-induced muscle damage as long as the muscle damage was low to moderate. The studies didn't overall combine to show there was great effect in really intense muscle damage. But this is a really important finding because anybody who's involved in any sort of high-level athletics, you know, the ability to recover is one of the key tenets and principles of being an elite athlete, and what really separates the great from the good, because the quicker you recover and can rebound from intense training sessions, the more you can train, and the more you train, the more you will tend to get better. However, in this systematic review, they didn't complete a meta-analysis, and one of the limitations of these studies they had indicated was that there was a heterogeneity of the methods and outcome measurements and the supplementation in terms of dosage, duration, and frequency. So therefore, this is still an area of research that needs further vetting out, but is quite promising as a supplement. It's relatively inexpensive. It has also shown promise not just in the performance setting, but also in clinical settings. Through my research for this video, I found a lot of studies in various different clinical scenarios, mainly to do with liver cirrhosis or liver cancer, etc., showing some initial promise of incorporating BCAA supplementation in conjunction with medical treatment and obviously supportive care with appropriate management by medical professionals. So it's a cheap, low risk, high reward kind of supplementation. But I've talked about the meta-analysis, but I want to quickly describe kind of two randomized clinical trials that I really thought were kind of cornerstone of the systematic review that had the best effect and kind of the most well done and well validated and most kind of systematic RCTs out of the 12 that they had included in their study, just to kind of give you a flavor of the benefits that we're seeing with BCAA supplementation versus no BCAA supplementation. So in 2010, a study was published in the International Journal of Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism, and it was examining the relationship between BCAA supplementation and delayed onset muscle soreness, or what's now famously known as DOMS. So this was a crossover double-blinded study conducted with 12 females. And so crossover simply means, just to simplify, is that everybody goes through both the placebo and the intervention arm. So they repeat the study, and it was using high intensity squat exercises to induce delayed onset muscle soreness. And this would be done twice for each individual, and one time they'd be given the placebo, the other time they'd be given the BCAA. And the importance of it being double blind is to kind of minimize the effect of the placebo effect. Because if you said, hey, here's this supplement to help you improve soreness, just the expectation that it may help, I know this has happened for myself, you think something is going to help, and it helps even though the supplement itself has no actual meaningful value, and that's a very hard thing to kind of control for when doing studies. And they actually found that the delayed onset muscle soreness did peak between day 2 and day 3 for both groups, the intervention group and the placebo group, but the amount of soreness was significantly lower in the BCAA group. Further, the maximum voluntary contraction, which is one of the best indicators of how well a muscle is kind of rebounding and able to get back to its peak performance and recover, the amount of decrease was significantly less in the BCAA group. It was 80% less decrease. Their decrease, was 80% of the decrease that was seen in the control group. So 20% lower decrease in maximum voluntary contraction of the muscle after this intense squat regimen. And further, they also conducted biochemical tests that indicated damage to the muscle, such as plasma elastase, and these were decreased in the BCAA group. So although this was a small study, they came to the conclusion that muscle damage may be suppressed by BCAA. So to build off this study, and a couple years later, there was a study that was published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Medicine. And again, they were exploring the relation of BCAA supplementation would reduce kind of the exercise-induced muscle damage. So they had 12 males, and in this study it was just a typical RCT. 6 were randomly assigned to the placebo arm, 6 were randomly assigned to the intervention arm, which was your BCAA supplementation. And the stress or the exercise intervention in this study was 100 drop jumps. And various measures were assessed to examine kind of performance measures and recovery measures. And in the BCAA group, the maximum voluntary contraction was significantly better than the control group afterward, from a time course after the stressor of the 100 drop experiments. But you might be thinking, hold on, this sample size is so small in these studies. All this research is complete hogwash. And you're right, the sample size is really small. And you definitely want to be worrying, not concerned, but to be a little bit skeptical when you see super small sample size, because it's easy for things to get distorted, because what underlies the randomization process is that with enough numbers, the potential confounding variables will be evenly distributed between the two groups. But unfortunately, in many studies, these exercise-induced, there's not as much funding as they are in the pharmaceutical drug company studies, because of their financial success in terms of producing companies, they're able to fund these studies, and it's incredibly expensive to run a good RCT. I've been told by some of my professors, it takes about $1 billion to get a drug from conception markets. That's a huge amount of resources to really expect studies such as looking into BCAA and performance. You're never going to get the same funding because it's not going to give you the same benefit as a pharmaceutical drug would. So it's really hard to run these big studies. So you do have to be consistent, but one of the most important principles in science is, can something be repeated? And in the systematic review, they found 12 different studies of relatively small size, but they're starting to see a common trend that BCAA supplementation was really playing an important role in kind of in reducing muscle damage or improving muscle recovery. And while there's 12 studies, it is quite small. It is quite, you want to be a bit questionable about it. On the flip side, it's actually quite remarkable that they're able to find statistically significant differences between the intervention group and the placebo group, it was such a small sample size, because there's a really important distinction, and I'll do a future video on this, but you have clinical significance versus statistical significance. So you can really essentially, if you have a big enough RCT, you have enough people, you can find almost any statistically significant, because you make your distribution so small that the intervention group will look different than the control group. But when you have such a small n, you typically have studies that show a really clinically significant change. So for example, a 20% decrease in how much your maximum voluntary contraction drops. That's a remarkable change. Whether it's truly due to the intervention or just random chance, that's what the statistical significance is kind of giving us an idea of. But the fact that it was statistically significant and it shows it clinically significant and it's been repeated over and over again really shows the power of BCAAs. So I'm sure you can appreciate that the best available evidence most definitely points towards BCAA having a modest performance benefit. Now, do not get twisted. Taking BCAAs isn't going to magically transform your body. It's not like steroids. You're not going to go into the gym and start becoming an animal. But it's definitely going to positively impact your performance. And if you really want to have long-term success and aim for mastery, or just do the best you can, it's going to be tiny baby steps, and it's not going to be a linear process. But you really got to be looking for any edge you can that's safe. And BCAAs are like the perfect complement to your work-eat regime. So what BCAA supplement do I use? I love BioX's BCAA Rush supplement, and obviously it has your branched-chain amino acids, your leucine, your isoleucine, your valine. It has it in a 2:1:1 ratio. That's not as important for this video, and there's a whole discussion and debate over the best ratios. That's kind of the one Health Canada recommends. And they have infographics. They're kind of just currently transferring over all the infographics for the supplements into a different database, so that'll be available later this year. But that's a great resource if you're concerned or interested in the supplement. That's the first go-to I would recommend, Health Canada's kind of information about that. But what's really cool about this BCAA Rush product, and what I really love, is it has your branched-chain amino acids, but also has glutamine, which is just has a whole host of benefits, and I could go on for days about that, so that's beyond the scope of this video. But it's also citrulline, and unfortunately I couldn't find a specific systematic review examining all the research around citrulline. But when I was studying for my Certified Strength and Conditioning Coach Specialist through NSCA, their textbook, they had a whole chapter on kind of organic aids, and citrulline, the amino acid citrulline, was also indicated in that chapter. And I've read a handful of research articles, really cool research, but I'm including the references, so if you're really interested, go read those. But citrulline is another amino acid, and it's really fascinating amino acid, because once you absorb it, it gets converted into L-arginine and nitric oxide. And the research has shown it has both a pretty modest but significant performance boost in terms of intensive anaerobic work output, muscle recovery, and aerobic work output. So it's a really great combination here. You have your branched-chain amino acid and you also have your citrulline. But before I end the video, I just want to discuss one last aspect of BCAAs that make them very useful and beneficial, not only for athletic performance, but also for body composition. As you may know if you've been following me on Instagram, and if you aren't, make sure you are, just kidding, do it if you want. But I've been following Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet, and I did while I was at Boston University, had great success, and I've gone back into it just because I'm really trying to get my body composition back to what I'd really feel like I want and feel healthier. And I've been having some great results with a slow carb diet. I've already lost 2.5 inches on my waist so far, and it's been just under a month. And BCAAs are one of his secrets he recommends, that kind of combating sugar cravings. And it's something I use all the time after a long, hard day at medical school. You get home, you're tired, you've been commuting, your brain's fried. It's so easy to raid the cupboard for sweets to kind of give you that lift. But instead, grab a glass of nice water, add a scoop of BCAA, and I'm good to go. But why does BCAA is so potent at combating these sugar cravings? And I mentioned before, earlier in the video, the branched-chain amino acids are readily converted to glucose. And a lot of times, when we get these sugar cravings, our blood sugar drops really low. So our brain is freaking out because our brain is constantly using blood sugar. Because unlike many other organs in our body, the absorption of sugar from our blood into brain cells is insulin independent. So our brain is one of the most active organs of our body. It's constantly sucking sugar from our blood. So if our blood sugars, which are maintained in a very strict homeostatic range unless we have diabetes or insulin resistance, If that drops to the brain kind of freaking out and saying, I need sugar, I need sugar, I need sugar, and then you get these sugar cravings. And the branched chain amino acids are a great kind of bridge between meals so that you're not snacking or you're not making bad decisions, and you can find kind of your cheat meal, so the one day on the slow carb diet. So I know this video is jam-packed with information, so you have to watch it again. Don't feel shame at all. It's a crap ton of information. But if you have any questions, or there's something I haven't answered, or there's another topic you think that'd be really interesting, you're confused or about anything I've said, please leave a comment below. I love discussing this stuff. And if you have any questions or future topics you'd like me to address, please just let me know below. And if it's something that someone already mentioned, you like it, just give their comment a thumbs up, because the more thumbs up there are in comments, the more I know that that's something that you all as individuals feel it's important and something I will address in future. So just remember in the comments, keep it civil. No need to be nasty or mean. You can disagree and have intellectual disagreements, but it doesn't mean that you have to berate or name call, etc. So just keep it civil, guys. Okay, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.